Welcome to the world of the Rolls-Royce Silver Spirit, Silver Spur and Bentley Mulsanne. I hope to be of help when you need reminding of the way in which the many features of the car operate. I'll be telling you about the radio console, about driving the car, the air conditioning system, about the security system, and the many controls and indicators. First, some details about the unit you're listening to now. The radio cassette player shares many features with domestic high-fidelity equipment. Dolby noise reduction is an example, and you may like to know that this tape has been recorded using the Dolby system to take advantage of the benefits it brings. The 3-waveband radio offers 12 preset stations, 6 on medium wave and 6 on VHF. Because the memory also recalls the last station you listened to on each of the 3 wavebands, so there is effectively one preset frequency on long wave as well. To store a frequency in the memory, you use the rocker switch to tune into the station you want, and then simply press the memory button, the one marked ME, and within 3 seconds, the appropriate station push button. In order to function, the memory needs a constant power supply, so you'll have to go through the procedure again if for any reason the battery is disconnected. Search tuning is another very convenient feature of this set. A touch on the rocker switch will initiate a scan either up or down your chosen waveband scale, stopping at the strong, relatively local stations if the search sensitivity button, that's the one at the top right-hand corner marked with 3 dots, is in, or at all stations if the button is out. If you're looking for a particular frequency, perhaps to store it in the memory, you can operate the rocker switch in a manual rather than automatic sense by pressing in the button marked with a small m. Incidentally, the digital frequency display cannot show a second decimal place, but it is a great help to accurate tuning on VHF to have the small mark, a sort of apostrophe, which indicates when a 5 would have occupied the place if there was one. Thus, if, say, 95.1 appears with the mark, the radio is tuned to 95.15 MHz. Full information about the radio cassette player is to be found in the printed material supplied with your motor car. So perhaps I need offer only one more reminder. To adjust sound balance between the front and rear of the car, you pull out the volume knob and turn, while the concentric ring behind it looks after the left-right stereo balance. In a moment, I will move on to some reminders about the driving of the car. And now, some helpful information on driving. And before you start the car, please make sure you're sitting in a comfortable driving position, and that you and your passengers are wearing seat belts. There is no denying the added safety they offer. And please confine children to the rear seats. In many countries, this is the law. The driving position you want is there, at the touch of a switch. Turn on the ignition and adjust the seat controls in the recess between the seats, and the manual squab adjustment lever is down on the outer part of the seat cushion. With the ignition on, or in the accessory position, you can use the 4-way switches next to the seat control to move the exterior mirrors. Starting the car is straightforward. Check that the foot-operated parking brake is on and that the pedal is pushed as far as it will go. If you're starting from cold, press the throttle pedal once to the floor. This sets the fast idle mechanism. Put the gear selector lever in park or neutral and turn the ignition to the start position, checking the warning bulbs as you do so. More about those later. The engine may run quite fast from cold, and you may want to kick off some of the fast idle by dabbing the throttle again. Now put your foot on the brake pedal before you release the parking brake. This stops the car from creeping. Then all you do is select D, or whichever gear range you prefer, release the parking brake by pulling on the polished metal catch, and then move your right foot from the brake to the throttle pedal. The speed control mechanism is another feature contributing to the ease of driving this car. First of all, switch on the system, and then, when you reach your desired speed, simply press the Set button on the handle of the gear selector lever and let the electronic system maintain that fixed speed in the range 30 to 80 plus miles per hour, 50 to 130 plus kilometers per hour. If you accelerate from that speed by pressing the pedal, the system will resume control when you take your foot off. Or, if you wish, you can gradually speed up by holding down the Set button. But as soon as you brake, the control system switches out. And yet it will remember your chosen speed and return to it when you move the on-off switch to its resume position. In the Silver Spirit, operating the resume control when the system is in use disengages it, and that might be more convenient than using the brake. The gear selector lever also offers you an intermediate range for extra engine braking, rapid overtaking, or extra acceleration to a maximum speed of 74 miles per hour, 120 kilometers per hour. The low position is a bottom gear hold with a maximum speed of 40 miles per hour, 64 kilometers per hour. For those who prefer it, there's the usual kick-down gear change when you stab the throttle. When driving the car from new, we hope you'll avoid hard cornering and keep below 70 miles per hour, 116 kilometers per hour, for the first 500 miles, or 800 kilometers, for the sake of the new tires. The engine has, of course, already been run in at the factory. In a moment, I'll give you some information about the air conditioning system. The Rolls-Royce air conditioning system is the most advanced, effective, and unobtrusive in the world. It has the cooling capacity of 30 domestic refrigerators and a total heating power of 9 kilowatts. The reason why a Rolls-Royce virtually never mists up inside is because all incoming air is first frozen to remove moisture, and then heated and fed into the car to achieve the temperature you wish. The system is so efficient that you'll find you actually do need that outside temperature indicator above the radio so as to avoid thermal shock when you step out of your air-conditioned environment. Basically, the design works like this. 3 temperature sensors monitor the air in the saloon. They command the system to feed air in through the bullseye vents, the central fascia duct beneath the radio, or the front and rear footwells, in order to maintain your chosen temperatures. The sensors automatically control the rear window heater as well. The controls to the left of the steering wheel enable you to select the temperature which suits you best at upper and lower saloon levels. Most people prefer to be cooler at the upper level for driving alertness, warmer lower down for extra comfort. The thumb wheel temperature selectors offer a range from approximately 17 degrees centigrade at the blue end of the scale up to 33 degrees centigrade at the red. The middle of the white segment represents about 25 degrees centigrade. To achieve the recommended level difference, turn the white segment to the left of the upper slot and to the right of the lower one. And please remember that these controls are temperature selectors. They do not control the temperature of the air issuing from the ducts. They establish climatic conditions in the saloon. So an essential piece of advice is set and forget. Altering the controls will not achieve your desired temperature more quickly. It is recommended that the function switch to the right of the selectors be left in the auto position, where fan speeds are automatically modulated to quickly attain and then maintain your chosen temperature. If you switch it to low, the fans operate at a constant speed more gently than normal. The high position runs the fans at variable speeds rather faster than auto, and the symbol on the extreme clockwise position means defrost. That's maximum fan speed and maximum heat directed onto the windscreen. Incidentally, we also provide an off position, because there may be occasions when this is required. I'd also like to tell you about several extra refinements of the air conditioning system that you may wish to know. For instance, you'll notice a 15-second delay on the fans after starting the car. This allows the system to establish frozen and dried air in the ducts. Otherwise, the car might perhaps mist up after being parked into wind. Also, the flaps and valves in the system don't operate until the engine has been started. This saves extra battery drain. And of course, the fans won't deliver heat until the coolant temperature reaches 44 degrees centigrade. That's usually within a mile or so of a cold start. The fascia auto switch to the left of the temperature selectors lets you override the system when pressed down to fascia and simply diverts air from the windscreen to the bullseye vents and central fascia duct on those occasions when the system is choosing not to use these outlets. You will use it when you want a flow of air at face level. However, there is an automatic reversion to auto once the ignition is switched off, as the system likes to be in charge when starting up. So there it is, the Rolls-Royce air conditioning system. And to allow it to operate at peak efficiency, we recommend that you keep the central fascia duct open, the function switch on auto, the upper temperature selector set to left of center, and the lower one to the right of center. And may I say again, set and forget. Next on my checklist is the locking system and the warning lights. The security system on the car is operated by two Yale keys. The square-headed master key operates all the locks, and the round-headed one operates only the doors and the ignition switch. I suggest, by the way, that if you haven't already done so, you note down the numbers on the key number card provided in the literature pack. To get into the car, turn the door lock. Initial movement unlocks that door. Further movement against spring pressure unlocks all the doors simultaneously. The boot may be unlocked from inside by pressing the button inside the glove compartment, for which you need the square-headed key, or from outside by using the same square-headed key in the exterior lock. The boot is automatically locked when you lock the car doors. The door locks inside the car are operated by the slippery-shaped sill buttons. Those on the front door operate like the external door lock. Initial movement unlocks that door. Further movement unlocks all four. The main Rolls-Royce anti-theft device is the link between the transmission lock and the ignition switch. As soon as the ignition key is removed from the switch box, the gear selector moves to park of its own accord, and so without the key the car is totally immovable. This feature also has important safety advantages. Incidentally, in all models except the Bentley Mulsanne Turbo, there is a nice secure spot covered by a removable panel beneath the floor of the boot. It is to the rear of the battery compartment. There's another innovation in the boot, the battery master switch on the top right-hand side of the boot panel. It's there mainly for the convenience of service staff, but for extra security you might occasionally use it to immobilize the car. If you do so, don't forget that you'll need to reset the clock and the radio frequency memory. By the way, to avoid damage to the alternator, don't use the switch when the engine is running. Now let's move on to the control switches and the warning indicators. The controls on the fascia center around the driving position, and in the switch box there's an accessory facility. This is the position to the left of the lock and allows for control of the front seats, radio and cassette, mirror adjustments and windscreen wipers. For all other services, the ignition needs to be switched on. There are a couple of warning lights on the switch box marked with standard symbols. The red light on the left is basically there to show if the charging system is not functioning correctly, but also serves to indicate when the accessory services are in use. The other, also red, warns against low oil pressure. Both are, of course, supplemented by gauges. The other warning lights are in the cluster next to the switch box. Just to check that all the bulbs are working, all of them light up, or should do, when the ignition key is moved round to the start position. Incidentally, the ice warning and low fuel warning lights are dimmed when the side lamps are on, so that they do not become a distracting nuisance at night. Back to the switch box. The light switch is self-explanatory, although the fact that pulling it out to operate the interior light over the driver's shoulder is sometimes overlooked, even by experienced Rolls-Royce owners. The speedometer is electronic, more reliable and much quieter than the old cable-driven mechanical type. You may like to know that it records speed and mileage while you're driving in reverse, but that is a novelty arising simply because it works by counting pulses. Immediately in front of the driver are two indicator lights, a blue one for main beam, and above it a green one to show that the parking lights are on. The green light will prove invaluable because the panel lights do not warn you to turn off the parking lights, as they do in most cars. As to save drain on the battery, they are turned off unless ignition and parking lights are on together. The control beneath the speedometer is a rheostat, altering intensity only. Moving on across the instrument panel, the large 4-in-1 instrument is straightforward, although unusual for a modern car, but a typical Rolls-Royce detail. The fuel gauge is used to give an indication of oil level in the sump when the button on the extreme right of the lower switch panel is pressed. Needless to say, this is best done when the engine is not running. At the center of the fascia is the digital display with three functions. On the left, the outside temperature reading that I mentioned earlier. It's in degrees centigrade, and it should be noted that it is accurate only when the car is in motion. Although only illuminated when the ignition is on, or in the ACC position, the clock is of course functioning all the time. To set it, you press both those small buttons on the front simultaneously with a couple of pencils or ballpoint pens, and this stops the counting program. To start it, you release the buttons simultaneously at a time signal, and you'll probably use the radio for that. This procedure starts the clock off at 0, so the final part of the setting involves getting the right hour and minute numbers up on the display by holding down the individual buttons until they appear. The instrument on the right is effectively a stopwatch, although the real title is Elapsed Time Indicator. The HS button is pressed to change the display from an hour-minute to a minute-second mode. R is for reset, ST is for stop or start. The digital display is also automatically dimmed when the parking lights are on. Let's go back to the right-hand side of the fascia now to look at the controls on the lower switch panels. One that hasn't been mentioned already is the wiper switch. That is perfectly conventional in operation, offering a choice of 2 continuous speeds or an intermittent wipe with a delay of about 7 seconds. The washer system for the windscreen, and, if they are switched on, the headlamps as well, is energized by pushing in the knob on the steering column turn indicator lever. The fog lamp switches have built-in warning lights. Those at the rear will only work when the front fog lamps or dipped headlamps are on. To the left of the fog lamp switches is the button used to release the fuel filler flap. For safety's sake, the engine should not be running at the petrol pump, so this switch is logically arranged to function only when the ignition is off. There is also a manual cable release for the filler flap. That might be used when the battery is disconnected, for example, and can be found in the top left-hand corner of the luggage boot. To the left of the steering column is the hazard warning switch. The warning light for that is just below the radio with the seatbelt indicator. And further over to the left of the fascia, below the glove compartment, is the fuse board. It is released by the press button at the side by the passenger's door and is floodlit to help you change the fuses. A detailed chart shows which fuses do what. Apart from the fuses, there are 3 thermal cutouts on the board. They're the black boxes with red buttons. If for any reason one of the windows refuses to respond to its switch, or the central locking system, or the electric gear shift, or the headlamps, or the seats, then the thermal cutouts are the first items to check. Press the appropriate red button to reset the device, and all should be well. Finally, the best car in the world deserves the best servicing. And please let me suggest that you only entrust the servicing and maintenance of your Rolls-Royce to the dedicated, skilled, and trained staff of an officially appointed Rolls-Royce distributor. You'll find a list of them, together with a lot of other valuable information, in the literature pack in the glove box. Also in there is the driver's manual, which gives you much more useful information than I've had time for, like where to find the bonnet release catch, which is under the steering column. And if your car is a newly delivered car, you'll find a complimentary can of LHM mineral oil, which is presented as a reminder that the unique braking and leveling systems of this car rely on the use of that particular oil, and positively and absolutely no other. Thank you for listening, and may I wish you many years of enjoyable motoring.